I'm Mitra Sorrells, and I am delighted to welcome Noelani Schroy. She is Vice President of Sales at Onyx CenterSource. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So today I want to talk to you about one of the kind of central tensions in hospitality today, which is how the industry adopts more technology while really preserving the human touch that, of course, we know is at the center of the business. And hospitality is often described as really one of the last truly human industries. So how do you square that identity with this relentless pressure to digitize everything?
So that pressure is real. And I think it's important to name it honestly rather than just to kind of paper over it with optimism. Most people who choose a career in hospitality don't do that because they want to manage a bunch of different software systems and learn a new platform every 18 months. They get into the industry because they love people and that love of crafting and making someone feel like genuinely welcome. That's true for the hotelier who started the front desk, and maybe 20 years later moved up to become a general manager. It's true for the travel advisor who has been like handcrafting custom itineraries for their loyal clients over decades. And the heart of the industry is relational, and there's no amount of technology that can or should change that. But what has changed is the operational environment of that heart. So there's the volume of data, complexity of distribution, pace of like guest expectations, intricacies of like B2B financial relationships between hotels and agencies. And none of that can be managed at scale anymore. And so the question isn't as much whether to engage technology, it's how to do so in a way that's going to protect rather than displace that human dimension. And I think the most honest answer is that technology should make people feel freer and not fewer. And so when that's deployed well, it absorbs the administrative weight that a lot of the team members can show up. And I'm sorry, so that a lot of the team members can show up more fully in like those very important moments with their clients. And when it's deployed poorly, it's going to create friction, confusion, and a sense that the tool is running the show instead of the people.
Yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense. And, I know hotels are really being pitched tech solutions constantly. We see that at Phocuswright, where we're getting these updates from different providers all the time about the next greatest thing. So whether it's property management systems, revenue tools, guest engagement platforms, what are you hearing from hoteliers about how that really is feeling to them in a day-to-day on the inside?
In a word, overwhelmed. That's really it. Just like you were mentioning, and there's always a new piece that's coming out every other day. So, overwhelmed is definitely the word I hear most often, and I kind of want to sit with that for just a moment, and instead of just jumping into the solutions, because it really deserves, I think, to be validated. So the volume of technology, the sheer volume that's being marketed to hotels right now is genuinely staggering. And many of the people being asked to evaluate and implement and champion these tools are leaders who built their careers on operational excellence and guest experience and not in being technologists. So there is a real and understandable discomfort that's being told repeatedly that the future of your business depends on your fluency of the platforms and the systems that feel so foreign. And it's not what drew you to this work in the first place.
Right.
So I've spoken with a lot of general managers, and it can feel like a lot of the vendor conversations start with these assumptions that they should already know more than they already do. And that's, to be honest, that's a failure on the vendor community and not necessarily on the hotelier.
Yeah.
So that being said, once we move past the overwhelm part, most hospitality leaders I work with do understand why certain investments are non-negotiable. So security, for example. So there's data that's flowing through a hotel's ecosystem. So you've got guest information, financial records, distribution partnerships. And that requires an infrastructure that cannot be left unprotected. And there's accuracy of financial processing. That's another important piece. The commission relationship between a hotel and travel agency partners is something, of course, I'm very intimately involved with right now. And it sounds like more of a back office function, but it's absolutely foundational to those partnerships. And the key is that when it works invisibly and correctly, it strengthens the relationship. But when it doesn't, it can actually erode that trust that really take years and years to develop. So my advice to hotels is always you don't have to love technology, but you do need trusted partners who understand both sides, the technology and the hospitality, and start there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, as I'm listening to what you're saying there about that feeling of overwhelm, and I think we're all feeling it in a variety of ways, but it's also a really exciting time. So, hopefully there's some recognition of that. So let's talk about the other side of the equation, which is of course the travel agencies. They have historically operated with a very high touch, relationship driven model. How would you see that they are navigating this pressure to modernize?
So I'm having that conversation quite a bit right now, and I do want to approach it with a respect for where many travel advisors are coming from. So the travel agency community, and especially like those independent advisors and smaller boutique agencies, they built their entire business on something that technology just, again, it has not and really should not replace. And that's the deep client trust, the personal experience, that relationship where a client calls you and not a booking engine when something goes wrong. And that's valuable, not just valuable, it's worth protecting.
Yeah.
But there is a growing divide within that agency community between those who have embraced technology as a tool that kind of extends their capacity and with those who experience it as more of like an imposition,
Yeah.
a cost, a complicated layer onto something that they've has worked for them for such a long time and they'd worked well without it for a long time. And I can hear this is a real frustration from advisors and they feel like the industry keeps moving the goalposts, asking them to invest in like another platform and have to do something differently than they had before. And it's all stuff that they used to do with a phone call. So I have an enormous empathy for that. And I also think that the honest answer is that the friction is kind of unavoidable, not because the technology is right and the reluctance is wrong, but because the volume and complexity that's around the B2B ecosystem that like agencies operate they've just outgrown what could be done manually.
Yeah.
So commission reconciliation, production tracking, payment visibility across all, hundreds of hotel partners. These just aren't small administrative tasks anymore, and they do require infrastructure. So the agencies that I see thriving are the ones who found technology that can kind of like disappear into their workflow rather than sitting on top of it. And the goal should never be, how digital are we in this space? It should be, how does this tool free me up to spend more time with my clients?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then let's think about it this way, whether it would be a hotel managing the guest experience or a travel agency managing its client relationships, where would you say the line needs to be drawn between what the technology should handle and what really has to stay with the human?
I love this. I love that question. So I would say that, so here, I draw the line here. Technology should own the infrastructure of the experience and people should own the soul of it. That sounds very cheesy, but I really do mean this. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like for hotels, like revenue management systems, scheduling, logistics, operational workflows, data processing, all of those pieces, those are areas where technology creates efficiencies without touching the guest relationship. So like a housekeeping system that coordinates the room readiness and the checkout patterns and staff availability, that's not going to replace hospitality. It's actually going to be creating space for it. What it's not supposed to do is become the primary voice of your brand,
Right.
especially not to a guest, right? And so a guest who needs a human response, think of, the front desk agent who can read the body language of, a tired guest that just comes up and is frustrated and, had a long day traveling, and that front desk agent's able to notice this guest needs a little empathy and maybe a
Yeah.
complimentary upgrade or amenity. That kind of judgment and that warmth, you can't script that into a workflow.
Right.
And for travel agencies on the other side, the calculus can be very similar. So if technology can handle maybe the research compilation and the itinerary formatting, the follow-up reminders, commission tracking, then let it do that. That's administrative, and that can free up the time for the advisors to do things that they do better than any platform could. And that's sit across from a client, listen to what they actually want from a trip, and design something around that conversation. So, one
Yeah.
advisor I came across described it really beautifully. I've stayed at this hotel, and this is what you will love about it. And there's not an algorithm for that.
Yeah.
And for technology vendors like us, this line is about knowing where our platform exists to serve the relationship between hotels and agencies, and not insert itself into the middle of it unnecessarily. The best technology in this space is the kind that both sides eventually stop thinking about altogether because it just simply works. And the question I would encourage every hospitality leader to ask before any technology decision: if we were to remove the human from this interaction, would the guest or partner, would they notice? And if the answer is yes, then keep the human.
Yeah, that's a really great way to think about it. So thank you for that. I know that you have spent many years working across both the hotel and the agency sides of the industry. Would you say there is a moment or an experience that has really crystallized your thinking on all of this?
There are many across many different tech platforms and many different conversations with many different hoteliers. But I'll say the ones that really stay with me are not necessarily the technology wins. They are the moments where I watch a relationship either strengthen or fracture based on whether people that were involved felt seen and supported. So early in my career, I spent a lot of time on property in hotels and conversations with operators, and they were proud of what they had built and were really protective over the culture that they had created. What I noticed is that the leaders who navigated the change well, these technology changes well, operational shifts, the market pressures, new systems, they weren't the ones who were the most technologically fluent. So they were the ones who were the most honest with their teams, and what was going to be changing, why, and they never let a platform or a process become more important than the people on either side of it.
Wow.
And that stayed with me. So
Yeah.
when I moved into this B2B space that I'm in now, the commission relationship between a hotel and travel agency looks very transactional from the outside. But it's actually a proxy for a much deeper partnership. And when the process works, then when an agency is like able to trust and they know that they're going to be paid accurately, they know they're going to be paid on time, and the hotel knows that their production is going to continue on and that relationship that they're pouring into is going to result in dividends. It just reinforces something that took years to build. But when that's not happening, it can actually create really, really long-standing damage. So my thinking on technology, it's shaped very much by that. The measure of a good system is not what it can do in a demo. It's whether the people that it serves can trust it and whether it makes their most important relationships stronger or more fragile.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, one final question for you. Particularly given your experience, what is one piece of advice that you would give to hospitality leaders, whether that's hoteliers, travel agents, or the vendors that serve them, on how to navigate the technology decisions that they're having to deal with right now?
So I would say don't let technology become the entire point. It's
Yeah.
really like you're saying, there's so much fun stuff out there, and I geek out on technology all the time. I love it. But we are in the hospitality space, so we don't want just technology for the sake of technology to be
Right.
taken on, right? And so it sounds really simple, but I see it happen all the time. A hotel can have like this investment in like every available guest facing platform, and it's going to be cool, and but not invest in the training of their team or how to recover gracefully. Like if the system fails, I know technology never fails, but when it does, like, how do we? And when you're not focused on that, or like on the agency side, that they may feel pressure to feel very digitally sophisticated and their client over to their clients, but in the back end, they're quietly struggling with all of these tools and how to make them fit, and it never
Yeah.
really actually goes into their flow. And on in vendors who can sometimes be so focused on the capabilities of their platform, they forget to ask whether it genuinely is going to make their partners' lives easier. So technology is
Yeah.
an infrastructure; it's not an identity.
Yeah.
And the identity of this industry, and it should remain this way, is that it's people and it's relationships. And a hotel's brand is the sum of how its guests feel when they are there. And a travel agency brand is the sum of how the clients feel about trusting someone else to design that meaningful experience for them. Neither of those things live in a dashboard. So, what technology can do when it's chosen carefully and implemented with humility, it creates more of a space for the human work that actually defines the industry. So, less time on reconciliation, more time on relationships, less time on administrative workflows, more time on getting to know your clients well and getting to surprise them, less time on operational firefighting, more
Yeah.
time on that craft of hospitality. And that is a trade worth making. And the vendors, the tools, the platforms that really truly understand their role in supporting this trade rather than replacing it, those are the ones to invest in.
Okay. Well, some really great advice and insights there as far as how to stay human in this increasingly digital industry. So thank you so much, Noelani Schroy from Onyx CenterSource.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.